Okay, y'all, here we go. Welcome to week 11 of Composition 2. I will let you know that this process of thinking about how to record information for you has been driving me bonkers. I guess because I do put a lot of time into thinking how to best give you information, and this method of doing so is not fun for me. I'm going to try to make it fun while also preventing Martha from pulling out the USB connection to this microphone. You'll see her later, I'm sure, in this process. But here we go. Screen recording on my Mac so I can go through some slides I've created for you and some documents that will be new to you that will be available on Canvas. So here we go. All right. So first and foremost, week 11, now what? At this point, you should have turned in your annotated bibliography. I hope that that's not an issue for you all as you're finishing that up. I've heard from some of you that that's what you're using your extra spring break time to finish. So hopefully you feel good about it and you can celebrate being ready to move forward. Now, before you watch this particular lecture, I'm hoping you will have read chapters 30, 35, 36, and 38 in the Norton. I will say, on a side note here, that there is this online company that has given everyone free access to borrowing textbooks if you need it. This document will be available to you on Canvas, but just wanted to show you really quickly that you can go to this site, fill out this information, borrow the book, and you'll have direct access. You can also, from my understanding, download the text as well if you don't have solid Wi-Fi access and you need that to stay on your actual computer. So that's for you. Look for that. That will be available. Before I talk about what we're going to do for this week, I want to pull up a new calendar. It's super basic, but I want you to be able to see kind of how I've rethought the remainder of our semester together. If you have any suggestions or want me to make any changes, I really want to encourage you to reach out and let me know. So this is just structurally what I'm thinking. This week, we'll do the basic introductions to the essay, the rubric. I'll talk about that momentarily. And then you'll see all of our other topics heading forward. Generally, though, for the rest of the semester, what I'm going to be, I guess, expecting of you so we can still maintain some academic integrity is for you to post a response to the discussion board no later than 11:59 p.m. on Fridays of each week. So that will give us some consistency. I'll also say, and I think I put this in the latest message to you, to maintain academic continuity and integrity according to the UNC system, you need to hear basically like an hour's worth of lecture from me or the equivalent, and then you have to do 2 hours of work on your own each week. I'm hoping to get pretty close to that, give or take, just so that you can feel like, yes, you completed this class, you feel good moving forward with the skill set you were supposed to move forward with. Great. Anyway, back to the slides we're talking about today. I really don't want to talk to you for an hour, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, so I'll assume that you'll have done that reading. Now you know how to access the textbook if you need a digital copy. This is the information for this week, week 11, so the 23rd through the 27th. This week I want you to think about how you did on your annotated bibliography. If you feel good about it, I'll be getting grades back to you as soon as possible so that you know what's good, what's not so good, and I'll talk about that in a second. We're also now going to talk about your research question, why that's important, how that is going to become your own prompt, and I'll go over the rubric with you for this final essay, which is what we're working on the rest of the semester. I want to give you some notes on creating a really solid thesis statement, some outline suggestions from another textbook, but that I think are really helpful for thinking about this essay in a more complex way versus how you may have been taught in high school even, because I do want us to reach, again, beyond that 5-paragraph essay. I want to talk to you about beginning your essay. I'm going to give you some examples and kind of break down some do's and don'ts. And then I'm going to go over thinking about your rhetorical situation for this essay. All of this is going to kind of speak to what I'm going to ask you to post about in response to this lecture on discussion board. At this point, I would probably ask you any questions before we move forward, but right now I'm just talking to myself and my cats. Okay, the annotated bibliography. I have graded some of them, and I'm super proud of the work that's been done. There are some issues, though, particularly with citations and then kind of generally leaving out some important information. But regardless, this is a reminder that the annotated bibliography is a genre in itself, and it's a practice in critical reading. You're not married to the sources that you've chosen. I hope you will use some of them so that you didn't just waste your time, but generally just be aware that you might have to go back and do some more research. But keep in mind that your final essay, which I'm going to talk to you about in terms of requirements just ahead, does ask you to use at least 6 sources, and 2 of them do need to be academic. So you will be synthesizing information. I know we've already kind of talked about working with a question and not making all of your sources boringly just answer that question exactly. So I hope that you can have some interesting conversation and use from the sources what works best for you. But that's what I want to remind you about the annotated bibliography. I'll also say that you won't be copying and pasting, right? You will not be copying and pasting your annotations, but the citations, if you use those sources, you will just be able to copy and paste over to your works cited page as long as they're perfect. So if they are perfect, which I will let you know when I grade them, then you don't have anything to worry about. But if you're missing some major stuff, I'll let you know that too. Or if you just totally messed it up, you might have to go back to the drawing board with citing. But again, use Purdue OWL. I'll happily talk to you about that one-on-one. We can do some office hours, and I'll make sure you understand what you're doing. Okay. Next. Moving on. What do you even put in your essay? This is a question I get often. I don't really know why, but it's a question I get often from students asking, well, what do I do with all this research I just did? Like, what do I actually do in the essay? Your research question that I asked you to think about and put as your title of your annotated bibliography, that is your personal prompt for what you're answering in your essay. This is also why I asked you to adjust if you have a yes or no style question. That's not necessarily bad, but I do want you to think about how to structure it a little bit differently so that your answer can be complex. Because as you'll see when we talk about thesis statements in just a bit, if you have a yes or no question, then your thesis statement is just like yes or no. And that's kind of boring, right, in terms of how to support that. So really, we want to think about ways to complicate our questions so that we can talk about something more widely and interestingly. Still super awkward for me not to ask you about questions. We'll interrupt this moment now with a visit from Martha. Who I think you can tell is a camera hog in some ways, even though I'm forcing her right now. Okay. Hey, Martha. We've got to continue with school, though. I do want to ask, do you prefer seeing cats or children from your professors? I don't have any children. I just have cats. But more power to your professors with children, because I could not do that right now. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about the rubric to this final essay.